Hey, you ever wake up one morning thinking it's just another day, only to have your whole world turn upside down? That's exactly what happened to me when I walked down to my favorite fishing spot at Willow Creek, expecting the usual calm of casting my line into the glassy water, only to find dead fish floating everywhere, the water shimmering with this unnatural blue streak, and a chemical stench so sharp it burned my nose. I stood there, heart sinking, realizing someone had poisoned my lake, and they didn't know it was the same water we all drink. I'm Ethan Carter, a 38-year-old fishing guide who's been around lakes and rivers since I was a kid, learning the ropes from my dad, who'd always say, a healthy lake is a living thing. Ethan, treat it right, and it'll take care of you. For years, I'd come to this little pond in our Pine Hollow neighborhood, tucked away in suburban Ohio, to fish at dawn, watching the sunrise ripple across the water. It wasn't just a hobby. It was my way of staying grounded, of feeling connected to something bigger. The HOA, led by this woman named Vivian Holt, never had a problem with me fishing, or so I thought. I kept the place spotless, followed every rule, even tossed back the small fry to keep the ecosystem thriving. But that morning, staring at those lifeless bass and sunfish, their scales glinting like broken promises, I knew this wasn't some natural die-off. This was deliberate, cold-blooded sabotage. The first clue hit me like a punch to the gut. A violation notice taped to my front door, printed on crisp HOA letterhead, demanding $200 for misuse of community property and environmental damage. I read it 3 times, my coffee going cold in my hand, because it made no sense. How could my catch and release fishing kill an entire lake? The kicker? The notice was dated yesterday, before the fish started floating. Whoever wrote this knew what was coming, like they planned it. My mind raced back to the blue streaks in the water copper sulfate. I'd bet my tackle box on it. The kind of industrial-grade algae killer only pros could get their hands on. I'm no detective, but I've spent enough time studying water systems to know this was no accident. Vivian Holt, the HOA president, was the kind of person who'd smile at you while slipping a knife in your back. At 50, she had this polished, realtor vibe-perfect hair, sharp blazer, the kind of charm that sold million-dollar homes but never quite reached her eyes. I ran into her that morning near the pond, her heels clicking on the path like she owned the place. Ethan, maybe if you didn't treat our lake like your personal playground, we wouldn't have this mess, she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. I clenched my fists, trying to keep cool. Vivian, I've been fishing here for years, cleaning up after others, keeping it pristine. You think I did this? She just shrugged, like my 20 years of conservation work meant nothing. All I know is we never had issues until you started showing up every day. Big changes are coming. Ethan, changes that'll make this place worth something. The way she said changes sent a shiver down my spine, like she was hiding something bigger than a grudge against my fishing rod. That night, I couldn't sleep, my dad's words echoing in my head. When the fish die, something's wrong with the system. I started noticing things I'd missed: fresh dirt piles near the lake, new pipes running underground toward the houses. Then it hit me. Willow Creek wasn't just a pretty pond, it was the main water source for our whole neighborhood, feeding into the treatment plant that supplied our taps. If someone poisoned the lake, they weren't just killing fish, they were poisoning us. I needed answers, so I called up my buddy Nate, a former HOA board member who'd quit last year after butting heads with Vivian. Ethan, you gotta see this, he said, meeting me at City Hall with a stack of water system blueprints. He traced a line from the lake to every house in Pine Hollow, his voice low and urgent. If that water's tainted, we're all drinking it, you, me, Vivian, her kids, everybody. My stomach churned as the pieces clicked together. This wasn't just about me fishing. Someone wanted the lake to look like a toxic dump, and Vivian's violation notice was starting to feel like a setup. I decided to dig deeper, maybe a little too deep for my own good. Late that night, I slipped into the HOA office in the community center basement. The side door was always unlocked for emergencies, a detail I'd noticed months ago. Vivian's desk was a mess of papers, like she thought no one would dare snoop. What I found made my blood run cold. Permits for a high-end condo complex, emails with a company called Crestview Properties, and a memo about needing visible contamination evidence to fast-track city approval for filling in the lake. Vivian wasn't just framing me. She was orchestrating an environmental disaster to cash in on a development deal. The next day, things got uglier. Vivian filed a lawsuit against me, claiming I'd been trespassing and spying on HOA property, twisting my midnight snooping into some kind of criminal plot. My neighbors started giving me the cold shoulder. Even Mrs. Larson, who used to bring her kids to watch me fish, hustled them inside when I waved. Rumors spread that I'd poisoned the lake to dodge responsibility, and my kitchen tap started smelling metallic, like the contamination was creeping into our homes. I was losing ground fast, but Nate stuck by me. "We need hard proof," he said, pulling out emails he'd accessed through his old HOA login emails showing Vivian had pocketed $75,000 from Crestview to document the lake's contamination. The timeline was damning. She'd been planning this for months, long before the first dead fish floated up. I knew we had to fight back, not just for me, but for every family drinking that water. I called my friend Sarah, a water quality expert who'd worked with me on conservation projects. "Ethan, let's do this right," she said, her voice brimming with determination. We organized a public water testing event at the lake, inviting every resident to see the truth for themselves. Sarah brought EPA-grade equipment, pH meters, analyzers, the works, promising real-time results no one could dispute. The whole neighborhood showed up that Saturday, kids playing, parents whispering, the air thick with tension. Vivian, of course, had her own plan. She rolled up with her own experts, some slick consultants in press suits, claiming they'd provide unbiased results. "We're here to protect our community," she announced, her sunglasses gleaming like armor. Then she dropped a bomb. "Ethan's been breaking into HOA property, stealing documents. He's the one you should be worried about." I felt the crowd's eyes on me, my credibility crumbling. Sarah's team got to work, pulling samples from the lake, while Vivian's guys did the same, turning it into a showdown. 2 hours later, Sarah's tablet lit up with results, and her face went grim. "Copper sulfate levels are 20 times above safe limits," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Lead and mercury. Too, this water's a health hazard." The crowd gasped, parents pulling their kids closer. Mrs. Larson's voice cracked as she shouted, "My son's been sick for weeks, stomach aches, headaches. We've been drinking this." Vivian's consultant jumped in, spinning some nonsense about seasonal variations, but Sarah wasn't having it. "This is industrial-grade poisoning," she snapped. "Someone with access to restricted chemicals did this on purpose." That's when Nate stepped up, holding those damning emails high. "Vivian took $75,000 to make this lake look toxic for a condo deal," he shouted. You could feel the air shift like a storm breaking. A lawyer neighbor, Ms. Patel, chimed in, "That's fraud and a conflict of interest. Those emails are hard evidence." Vivian's face went pale, her usual poise cracking like cheap glass. She tried one last desperate move, storming over to the lake's fountain connected to the same water system and scooping up a handful. "This is all a lie," she screamed, gulping it down like she was proving a point. I watched, half horrified, half mesmerized, as her face twisted, her hands clutching her stomach. Within minutes, she was on the ground, retching, the toxins she'd unleashed now tearing through her. Paramedics rushed in, and EPA agents showed up, badges flashing, announcing a federal investigation. "Deliberate contamination's a serious crime," one agent said, her voice like steel. up to 10 years in prison. Residents started organizing right there. Ms. Patel drafted a petition for a class action lawsuit, and families lined up to sign, their anger boiling over. Vivian was hauled off to the hospital, her career and reputation in tatters. We voted Nate as interim HOA president, and he promised transparency, new bylaws, and regular water testing. Vivian later pleaded guilty to environmental crimes and fraud, slapped with 3 years probation, a $75,000 fine, and a lifetime HOA ban. She had to pay for the cleanup, too, which bankrupted her. 6 months later, I stood by Willow Creek, casting my line into water that was finally clean again. The fish were back, the air fresh, the community tighter than ever. Vivian thought she could poison our lake and our trust for a quick buck, but the truth has a way of rising, like a fish breaking the surface. Looking back, I wonder, was she just greedy, or did she really believe she could control everything? What would you have done in my shoes? Fought like hell, or walked away? Drop a comment. Let me know what you think about this mess, about justice, about standing up when everyone's against you. Hit that like button, subscribe, and maybe toss a little support our way with the thanks button. Thanks for sticking with me through this wild ride. The truth always wins, but man, it's one hell of a fight.